Hi, I'm retired U.S. Army Colonel Chris Kolenda, and I am undertaking a 1,700-mile bicycle journey called the Fallen Hero Honor Ride to visit the graves of the 6 paratroopers from my unit who were killed in action in Afghanistan. During our deployment to Afghanistan, I was the task force commander, so battalion level commander as a lieutenant colonel. We had about 800 paratroopers that were serving out in eastern Afghanistan. In the summer of 2007, it was one of the most violent and deadliest areas of Afghanistan. I had the good fortune of going to graduate school at the University of Wisconsin, which was one of the best preparations I had, actually, for the complexity that I encountered in Afghanistan. Bicycle was the right, for me it was the right choice. The problem is I hadn't ridden a bicycle in 20 years. And so I went out and I bought a very nice road bike. I hired a cycling coach and I started telling people so I don't check it out. The ride will raise funds for the Saber Six Foundation, which is designed to help my unit's veterans and their families and descendants achieve their dreams, and also to fund a Rotary Club of Milwaukee scholarship endowment in the names of our 6 paratroopers. And I've spoken to just about all of the families, 5 of the 6 families. They all plan to be there as I visit each gravesite. I'm the right person to tell this story because all 6 of them were in the unit I led. It's been 15 years, 15-year anniversary coming up. They deserve to have their stories told. They deserve to be remembered. I'm in a position where I can do that. I want to advance their legacies of support and service to our country. So the ride starts at Chris Pfeiffer's gravesite on September 25th in Spalding, Nebraska. Chris Pfeiffer was a infantryman from Spalding, Nebraska. And so we had this connection from Nebraska in common because I was born in Omaha. Chris and I would talk about Nebraska football all the time. The great days of the 90s and the not so great days of the mid-2000s as we were experiencing them. August of 2007, a new football season to get ready to gear up. And so we would talk about that every time I'd go visit the outpost where he was stationed. He's there, that reliable, Mr. Reliable, that is always doing the right thing and protecting his comrades. And what I find interesting about Chris and what's always struck me about him is those are his choices. You can make the choice to be reliable and somebody that somebody could count on, or you can make the choice not to be. It didn't matter who your parents were. Didn't matter where you were born, whether you were born on third base or first base or at home plate. That choice is yours. And that's the choice Chris made. You could always count on Chris. You always count on him to do the right thing. And making sure that the weapons were clean, weapons would always fire. Everybody knew that when Chris Pfeiffer got behind a weapon and it was going to be clean, it was going to work, and it was going to save people's lives. In late August, there was a firefight at that outpost, and Chris was shot right about there. Bullet missed his body armor by about that much, penetrated his chest cavity, and he was bleeding internally. We had a physician's assistant on the outpost, did a remarkable job of stabilizing Chris to the point where we could get him medevaced, a helicopter to come in, pick him up and take him to my main outpost. We had a surgical team at my main outpost. And I remember the medevac coming in. I knew Chris was on it. He was on the stretcher, walked with him towards the hospital tent. And I was speaking with him, and I know he could recognize my voice because he would orient towards it. But, of course, he had eyes that were open, but you could tell he couldn't see anything. He was, of course, in shock. It turns out that the bullet nicked his liver. And the internal bleeding continued to the point at which the doctors just simply ran out of blood. And they let us know, we are running out of blood. He's taking so much blood, we're running out. We asked everybody on the outpost, anybody with O-type blood, to come in and donate blood. And we had 50 people lined up, all donating blood. And it was enough for Chris to stabilize. Doctors finally stabilized him, stopped the bleeding. He eventually got evacuated to San Antonio, the military hospital in San Antonio, where he was met by his parents, his wife Karen, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, going into her 9th month. Chris fought for his life for a month. On September 25th, he died of his wounds. And the next day, Karen went into labor. And then the day after that, their daughter Peyton was born. So we'll start at his gravesite on September 25th, and Chris's parents and Karen and Peyton will all be there. She'll be 2 days shy of her 15th birthday. Wow. From Spalding, Nebraska, we'll travel east to Carroll, Iowa, where Adrian Hike is buried. Adrian was the first soldier I ever pinned on a combat medal. He had recently come back from Iraq. I took over the unit, and Adrian was, had a combat medal coming to him, and so that, that's always stuck with me. He saw some really heavy fighting in Iraq in 2004, 2005, and of course, nobody who goes through intense fighting like that comes away unaffected. Adrian came away affected like everybody else. Adrian had been a staff sergeant, and getting into some disciplinary problems, I had to reduce him in rank to private, all the way down to private. I mean, we're still training, and he's an extraordinary soldier. I remember one of his staff sergeants, one of his squad leaders said, "There is nobody I trust with my life more than Adrian Hike." I mean, he is that good, and he's such a tremendous example. Even as he had his disciplinary challenges and reduced in rank all the way to like private E1. I mean, he knew I had no choice, really. I mean, he knew. He took his lumps, and he fought his way back. And I just have so much respect for his resilience and perseverance. After a few months of this, I had a conversation with Adrian. I said, what's changed? What's different? And he said, "I can't control what happened to me. I can't control what's going to happen, but I can control how I deal with it." And that day when Adrian made that choice, that choice of resilience, he became a champion. And he was a champion every day for the rest of his life. The courage that it took to look at himself and say, "I've hit rock bottom, and I'm going to do the things I need to do to get well." And he did. He is still setting the example as a peer leader, as somebody who is helping everybody around him get better. And one of the things that struck me the most about Adrian is, he recognized that he had hit bottom, and he got the help that he needed. And his chain of command supported him getting the help that he needed to deal with those experiences in Iraq and to bounce back and get his life back together. And he fought his way back all the way to sergeant. I've never been so proud of a soldier, just seeing him succeed and seeing him thrive. He is described by many of his colleagues as the person that they would trust their lives to the most. Was Adrian Hike. Extraordinarily good as a soldier. He was, so respected that his company commander chose Adrian to be the gunner on his Humvee. So the gunner is somebody who is in the top of the Humvee with the weapon system. And so you put your best soldier there in that position. And that was where Dave Boris, his captain, put Adrian. And on November 12th, day after Veterans Day, so November 12th of 2007, they were riding in a Humvee on a combat patrol when their vehicle struck an improvised explosive device, and Adrian was killed instantly in that IED strike. So from Carroll, Iowa, where Adrian Hike is buried, we'll travel due east to Elwood, Illinois, and that's where Jacob Lowell is buried at the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery. He was a paratrooper, infantryman from the south side of Chicago, big time Chicago Bears, Blackhawks fan. And he was somebody that, his platoon mates always said that they could count on him They count on him to do the right thing. And when you can count on somebody to do the right thing, even when nobody's watching, even when circumstances are at their toughest, like what he faced, that's when you get organizations that perform greatly, and his organization did. Just tough young man. And being a tough young man, he was also assigned to be the gunner on a Humvee. And on June 2nd of 2007, Jake was with his unit on a combat patrol on a route reconnaissance when his patrol came under fire. And almost immediately, Jake Lowell was shot in the leg. He could have gone down at that point and asked for medical assistance, but he didn't. He got back up on his machine gun and was, giving life-saving fire support to everybody else in the unit. And during that time, when he's engaging the enemy while bleeding from this leg wound, he was killed in action. He was awarded the Bronze Star for valor, for his courage in that fight and saving the lives of the other people in his patrol. From Elwood, Illinois, we'll go southeast towards Indianapolis, and Ryan Fritsch is buried in Hall, Indiana. Ryan is a staff sergeant, also in infantry. When he first came to the unit, he was our schools NCO, so the person who got people to professional schools. And this is a big deal because promotions and qualifications, all of these things are tied to getting the right schools. Our unit had just reflagged from kind of a heavy cavalry, tanks, Bradleys, to airborne. And so we had to get a few hundred people to airborne school. Had to send them from Germany to Fort Benning, Georgia for airborne school, and get them back in time for training in preparation for this deployment. And this is an exceedingly difficult task, and it all fell on Ryan Fritsch's shoulders. And he did it. He managed all of that. I remember NCOs, some of our soldiers coming to me and just saying how much they appreciated all of the work, because Ryan would just bend over backwards to make sure that everybody got the schools that they needed. And I would get notes from soldiers saying, I really appreciate Staff Sergeant Fritsch. He took care of me. He got me to the schools that I needed to be eligible for promotion. He got me to the schools I needed to be qualified at my job. And I was very thankful. They were very thankful for that. I was very thankful because it says something about an organization when you have people who approach their jobs with benevolence, and Ryan Fritsch exemplified that. I mean, just extraordinarily well organized, cared about people, and really took pride, of course, in what he did, was very good at it. He wanted to lead a squad in combat. He wanted to be a squad leader in combat. In July of 2007, one of the NCOs in the unit, who was a squad leader, he was injured. We asked Ryan to take over that squad, and of course he did so. Soon after that, we were involved in this really big operation. And Ryan's squad was going to play a key part of that. So on July 27th of 2007, Ryan was leading his squad, in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, and this massive firefight develops. It was bigger than anything that we'd seen to date or since then. As Ryan is leading his squad to gain a position of advantage over the enemy, he was shot and killed instantly. Leaving behind his wife, Brandy, and his mom, Valita. I mean, every death is devastating to a unit. Because he touched so many people were, really affected by his loss. From Hall, Indiana, we'll go east through Ohio and all the way to eastern Pennsylvania to Minersville, Pennsylvania, and that's where Dave Boris is buried. Dave was one of my troop commanders, one of my captains. Dave was a West Point graduate. I'd known Dave longer than anybody else in the unit. I'd known him since late 2003. Dave was like a little brother, he's like a little brother to me and to other folks. Exemplar is somebody who sets the example, sets the right example. Somebody who is not afraid to be the most vulnerable person in the formation, so to speak, because they are saying, I want you to act. I want you to have the character and competence just like me. And that's what Dave, that was his ethos. He's the kind of officer that you just want to be around. He exemplifies what a good officer ought to be. I mean, he's exceptionally good at what he does and got competence, the character. He's able to have great relationships with his subordinates, with his peers, and with his leaders. And Dave always had a great way of telling me when he thought I was making a bad decision, or when giving me the feedback I needed to be a better leader. So he was really good at that. And so Dave and I are very, very close. I'd also gotten to know his wife Jamie quite well, also through this time. So Dave was always willing to go out on the patrols to set the example in some of the toughest patrols that his unit would ever face. Dave would never ask anybody to do anything that he was not fully prepared to do himself. And Dave was commanded by Troop A of the unit, and he was on a combat patrol on November 12th of 2007 when his vehicle hit an improvised explosive device, and Dave was killed instantly. So he was with Adrian Hike in that same vehicle. My command sergeant major and I were both scheduled to visit. We had planned to visit Dave and his unit because they were in a different part of Afghanistan, and we had a significant thing happen up in my area. My command sergeant major went down south to visit Dave and his unit, and so he was right behind Dave's vehicle when it exploded. Go pedal south from Minersville to Arlington National Cemetery, and that's Tom Bostic's final resting place. So Tom, also one of my troop commanders. Four of the 6 paratroopers were leaders. Captains at the time, and non-commissioned officers, and it was part of our expectations as a unit that leaders set the example, and leaders are at the forefront of the fight. And Tom was the same way. That's how he led. That's how he expected his soldiers to lead. He had been on multiple deployments. Tom was the best combat leader I'd ever met. Just watching him orchestrate artillery, airstrikes, the movement of his platoons in these firefights, it was just, he was just gifted. Yeah, it was like poetry. He was just so good. As a captain, as a company commander, he was the best soldier in the unit. I just had a tremendous amount of faith, of course, in Tom, and so did his soldiers. He was loved and respected by everybody, and he was in the toughest part of our area because I knew that, they were the ones that were going to be able to handle that. And we'd been in multiple firefights up to that point, and Tom every time was just absolutely masterful. On July 27th of 2007, we were in this big firefight, biggest one we'd ever had. I'm on a mountain about 5 miles away, so I can hear Tom just orchestrating this fight, where there's probably, 200 plus insurgents, maybe more, up in the mountains, and Tom's unit is in the valley, the valley floor. This firefight goes on for about 4 or 5 hours, and Tom, again, is just masterful leading this fight. Then the whole valley just got quiet. Around, it's like 12 or 1 o'clock. And I remember talking to Tom on the radio, Bulldog 6 is Saber 6. So Bulldog 6 is his call sign, Saber 6 is mine. Bulldog 6 is Saber 6. What's the situation? And Tom, of course, gave me a great update, let me know what was going on. He had, some soldiers wounded, we'd gotten them medevaced out, and he was getting ready to continue the mission, and he starts coordinating, giving direction, orders to his units to do that. And after about an hour or so of silence, I hear this gigantic, boom that echoes down the mountain valley. And this firefight renews to even bigger intensity, greater intensity than before. And I hear a radio transmission that says the CP's been hit. And CP meant command post, which meant Tom was under direct fire. So I waited for a bit. I don't want to bother him while he's fighting for his life, of course. And I wait for a bit, and then I pick up the radio, Bulldog 6 is Saber 6. No answer. Bulldog 6 is Saber 6. Silence. Bulldog 6 is Saber 6. What I heard next, on the one hand, made me really, really proud, where his sergeants and his lieutenants are calling in air and artillery strikes and taking the fight to the enemy just like Tom taught him how to do. On another level, I knew. You can never fully prepare for a situation like that, where you feel that your only choices are, I ask somebody to sacrifice themselves so that the rest of us can have a chance to get to a different position, to reposition and take the fight to the enemy, or I do it myself. You can never fully prepare for that kind of choice, knowing that either you are going to put yourself in a situation you might not walk away from, or you're going to ask somebody else to put themselves in a situation where they may not walk away from. There's no way to prepare fully for that in that exact circumstance, but everything Tom did in his life prepared him for that day. And when he saw that situation in which the only way that everybody else is going to survive is if he put himself at risk. And so Tom ordered the rest of the people in his command post to reposition to a place where they can keep taking the fight to the enemy. And then Tom single-handedly counterattacked that enemy force, drew their full attention towards him, and the rest of his team was able to get to that position and then keep calling air and artillery strikes in on the enemy and taking the fight to them that day. And the boom that I heard was a rocket-propelled grenade that killed him. Tom, for his valor, was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is our nation's second highest medal for valor. What I hope 10 to 15 years from now is that more of our people, our unit, are alive and thriving. It's been 15 years since that deployment. People from that unit are in their mid to late 30s, they're approaching their 40s. Some of the older ones are into their 40s. And according to some studies, happiness follows kind of a U. And the bottom of that U is like your mid 40s. And I mean, we've heard of all of the stories about veteran suicides. I mean, we had over 7,000 American service members killed in action in Iraq and Afghanistan combined, but over 30,000 died by suicide. When somebody believes that their most significant time is in the rearview mirror, it becomes awfully hard to look in the windshield. But that's the only way that you have hope for the future, is if you're able to look in the windshield. By putting together this foundation, I want to help people achieve their dreams. I want to help our members of our unit, their families, their descendants to achieve their dreams. You know, they all went to Afghanistan. 6 of our soldiers died there. We all went so that Americans could achieve their dreams. That's why we serve. This foundation, I want to help people thrive so that they can chart out their dreams, and this will give them the financial resources and support to achieve them. There are many ways to support us and to follow our progress. The easiest way is to go to our website, honorride.us, and you'll be able to see all the different ways you can support this endeavor and to follow our progress as we make our way from Spalding, Nebraska, all the way to Arlington National Cemetery.